Just to remind people, there's the poll. So what you do is you click on the tab that says polling. It's right next to the discussion tab. Jorge, good morning. Jorge, there we go. Montse. All right, Leonardo. Excellent. So welcome back. We are passing mile, let's say 20 or 21 of the virtual La Jolla conference, coming into a wonderful home stretch of the discussion, and today, Mexico Day. We obviously had the panel earlier focused largely on the oil and gas sector, but we did get into some of the topics that I think nicely set up our conversation here. Let me introduce the panel, and then I'll throw it over to our moderator. I'm really enjoying being able to just be a listener and participant via listening mode on these sessions today, after people seeing and hearing way too much of me this week. But we're very pleased to have Juancho Eekhout from Sempra LNG. He's Vice President of Development. He's just come back, or recently come back, to Sempra headquarters here in San Diego after a few years as I think Commercial Development Director at Innova in Mexico City, right, Juancho? Sorry, yeah, I made you. You did a great job having your microphone muted, and then I put you on the spot. You had to pivot. No, it's great to have Juancho, and let me reiterate, obviously those who've been to La Jolla Conference and been to Institute of the Americas programs, just how important support from Sempra Energy has been. It's our hometown support here. It's crucial for all that we do, and obviously with that company's focus on Mexico, natural gas and LNG and renewables. Delighted to have Juancho on this session. Leonardo Beltran, who probably doesn't need much of an introduction, but let me just remind everyone, he served for many years as Deputy Secretary of Energy Transition, Deputy Secretary of Energy from 2012 to 2018. And I'm very happy to call him a colleague in the last year and a half. He's been non-resident fellow at the Institute of the Americas since early part of 2019, and we've been working together. Well, we've been working together for a long time, but officially for a year and 5 or 6 months. And a reminder of the paper that we posted on the site that Leonardo wrote about the role of SOEs and sort of this pandemic and climate issues. Commend that paper to you. Also want to thank Hartree Partners, a sponsor of this year's La Jolla Conference, and we're welcoming Gerardo Serrato, the Managing Director, Hartree Partners in Mexico, and I know Pedro Haas and colleagues from Hartree Partners, Scott Monette. We greatly appreciate your support. Hope you guys are dialing and tuning in for this session. Guillermo Zuniga, who is a former commissioner at CRE and a lawyer and working for an organization called Earthjustice. And Guillermo, I have to say, not to put you on the spot, but you've now broken our chain of panelists who are lawyers who wear ties. So that's perfect. It's Friday afternoon in many places, and you are the first lawyer to join a panel who didn't wear a tie. So thank you. I think that's a good streak to break, considering where we are right now. And our moderator, like I said, I'm very happy to be able to just fall back into listen mode here. Montserrat Ramiro, Montse, former commissioner at CRE, member of the Women in Energy group in Mexico, Voz Experta, which, if you aren't familiar with, is an amazing group of women experts in Mexico regarding energy. Rosanetti Barrios, who was on the earlier panel, is part of that. Lourdes Melgar, a whole roster and group of just amazing women who have done an amazing job of making sure that people like me always have expert women voices as part of this conversation. So we're so happy to have you, and I'm very happy because I'm going to hand it over to you right now and remind people to jump in on the poll. And so, Montserrat Ramiro, Montse, over to you, please.
Well, thank you. First of all, I want to thank the Institute of the Americas for the opportunity to moderate you. I'm honored. And especially this panel, since I think power and gas are two deeply intertwined topics and are both central to Mexico's ability to develop and also central to the world's ability to tackle two main issues, which is, well, firstly, climate change, and then the electrification of economies with an increase in power demand, blockchain, social inclusion, that sort of thing. So both power and gas are two issues that will be crucial for the world's future, and certainly are crucial for Mexico's future. And there's been a lot of noise around these things in Mexico, so it cannot be more sort of on point to be talking about these things. So why don't I throw at you the first sort of give us your comment on what role, if any, will the energy sector have in supporting economic recovery in Mexico now that we have this COVID reality?
Thank you to all the attendants for participating and remaining engaged, and a pleasure to be sharing this panel with you, esteemed colleagues. So back to the question, Monse, the role of the energy sector in the recovery in Mexico is huge. It's huge. As you know, the Mexican economy is pretty much a manufacturing economy in a lot of senses. 90% of the products that get exported into the U.S. from Mexico are manufactured. And having energy security, reliable and cost-effective energy for the Mexican industry, commerces, and households is paramount to the recovery of the economy. As you know, the demand for pretty much all the commodities is down. It's going to come, it's going to start recuperating in the next few weeks with people coming back to normal. But having that reliability, having that cost effectiveness, and having that energy security is key to the success of the economy. Second, the role of the energy sector is huge in terms of investments. There's energy infrastructure gaps in the country, and there's people in the private sector that are willing to, step in and make investments that are necessary. And those investments, they not only bring, jobs as well as, investment in local products and services, but they do have an excellent multiplier effect in the rest of the economy. So I think in sum, I believe the energy sector has a huge role to play in the recovery, and we look forward to it and being part of that.
No, we cannot.
Sorry. Yeah, now. Okay, thank you, Juancho. I think, well, the next questions are sort of group questions on the role of not only gas and power, but power, gas, and renewables in Mexico in terms of economic activity, and also in terms of what it could bring to the goal of renewables and our commitment into the world. And then there's a lot of questions on investment. But I think we cannot discuss these things without sort of addressing the elephant in the room, and that is what's been going on in the past few months and in the past few days in Mexico. So to that end, I would like Guillermo Zuniga to give us a little bit of perspective on what's your take on the implications for Mexico of the last sort of in uncertainty in terms of what will happen to the renewables and what that means for our international commitment and the compliance of the law, our national law of energy transition, for example. Could you address that?
Yes, of course. Thank you. And thank you for the invitation. Thank you to Guillermo and Martin. It's a great distinction to be here. Well, we have to take into account a very important convergence between energy policy and climate policy during the last couple decades. We have been fortunate enough to see that technology has been moving forward, has been reducing the cost of renewable energy. Disruption are happening one after the other. First was the renewable disruption. Solar and wind power getting so much competition when it comes to pricing. Then we saw other disruption, storage, coming to the rescue when it comes to managing the reliability of the renewable generation. Also complementing its opportunities to address different services. Well, nowadays we see that renewables can offer peaking services from time to time if they are paired with a storage capacity station. And also now we are talking from time to time about hydrogen, green hydrogen as an energy carrier. So we are seeing a lot of disruptions that are making it easier to address climate change from an energy perspective. And Mexico was, I think it was a very important player. Let's not forget, we were the first emerging economy that ratified the Paris Agreement, and we even enter we enter our international commitments into our domestic legal framework. We have very well designed climate change law, which is very well coupled with the energy transition law. No, 2024 is an important date in which we are supposed to reduce 22% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the country, as well as to reach the 35% of renewable energy capacity generation. So all these elements are telling a story that Mexico was doing the right thing, and I think that's important, and I think we were on the right track. However, we have to take into account the realities of how technology adapts to specific policy frameworks and rules. It turns out that technology are fragile to rules. The rules have to be explicit, like storage. If you don't have a rule saying that storage is feasible and how to pay storage and that it can be integrated to grid, investment in storage can be, slower. And we have a situation in which the rules are being rewritten. The rules are no longer being predictable. The rules are changing way too fast without public consultations. And that can really hamper the enthusiasm to address climate change through clean energy investment. And that's not a very, that's not good for the climate change and the convergence with energy policies. So in that regard, I do think that Mexico faces a challenge and a risk, or not able to comply with its international and legal commitments that are actually in force in different legal frameworks.
Thank you, Guillermo. And so this brings us to another elephant in the room, which is the implications of the latest legal attempts to change the rules, and it certainly brings out questions on CFE and competition, and is it a level playing field, and not only will we be able to comply with our commitments and integrate renewables at the rate we should be doing so, and that makes economic sense. So to that end, in terms of the competition aspect of the whole idea, I would like to ask Gerardo if he has, what's your point and your perspective on the implications on competition, the legal framework, and the possibilities for the Mexican power sector? Gerardo, your mic is off.
Now it's okay. Well, I was saying that I'm very happy to be here and very thankful of having the opportunity to bring Hartree's opinion on this sector. And my response to that question would be maybe a general one, trying to find where we are having troubles and why we are having those troubles. I think the question is essential to understand what is going on. And on my point of view, I think there is a conceptual contradiction between what we developed in the past, the market model, and what we are asking to that model from the government. And this government considers that the model can serve as a way to strengthen CFE and at the same time to attract investments. And this seems to be not possible. The current model was instituted by the previous administration to promote private participation and in general terms to lower the needs of public investments, which was aligned with many other reforms in the world by considering that efficiency could come from competition and financial needs would lower for the states. And that was like a consensus around that. And the previous administration did a great job by building a new model based on market rules and private participation. And the current administration is considering that they can use this model, competitive or competition, to strengthen CFE, which seems to be not the case because the model wasn't designed to do that, but to promote efficiency and private participation. So I am not saying that there's a superiority in one model or another, but the main goal of every model is to look at the objectives you want to reach. And if we want to get investment, I think the current understanding of the model maybe is not the best way to do it. And we are seeing that SENACE is losing to a certain extent its independence. They are looking at technical issues to solve technical issues, which are very important and are there. The intermittence of the renewables, it is a fact. There's a problem with that, and SENACE needs to deal with that. But they are doing within a framework as they used to do it in the old CFE, a vertically integrated company, which erect barriers to the participants. So you cannot continue doing the same way you used to do it, because you will have this contradiction. You will be taking centralized decisions, but at the same time not letting the market to send signals, price signals to the private investors. So my point is that you need to make the model fit with the situation. If you want to continue with this strategy of a stronger CFE and a dominant CFE in the market, you need to change the rules. You cannot continue using the same rules that were not designed to do that. And on the other side, I do see that that's a big issue. There's not enough time to change the model. It is the previous administration made a great job. I was always impressed, and many of you were there. So congratulations, because the work done was impressive. A lot of rules, norms, manuals. It's impressive how you did it in such a short period of time. So if we want to change the model, I think we are running out of time, but at the same time, we need to do something. If we continue with this contradiction between models, I think we won't have private investment, and we won't have neither the strengthening of CFE. I would say that there are some models in the world we can look at, maybe like France or others, that wanted to keep a public company, a strong public company, and at the same time allow private investment to arrive. But my main message here is we need to do something to make coherent the model we have and the goals the present administration has.
Well, thank you, Gerardo. I think you've touched upon something that is crucial, and that is sort of the feasibility of CFE actually being able to pull out what it's been asked to do. And maybe even sort of the reason why the changes to the law and the current sector framework is done. I think the reason why energy reform came about was precisely because sort of the centralized state monopoly model was inconsistent with sort of the economic reality of the country. And there was not enough money or resources to bring into the sector in order for it to provide what Mexico needed. And so it happened, as well as in many other countries in the decade after. It came about the idea of well, we need private investment and we need transparency in terms of economic signals, pricing, etc. So we can give economic certainty to investment, and we can bring about the energy sector that the country needs. So in this sense, I do see that there is a disconnect between what the current government is asking CFE to do and asking the private sector to live with. And there is something that, to say it sort of bluntly, something's got to give. And I think one of the main issues with the disparity is changing economic dispatch in power generation. And to that, I don't know if any one of you wants to address this and the importance it has for the rest of the players, not only, and even for CFE, economic dispatch is crucial for the power industry. And so if anyone wants to comment on the importance of it, I think it's important. Leonardo.
Thanks very much, Montse. First, I would like to thank, of course, Jeff and Jeremy for giving me this opportunity to be part of the team of the Institute of the Americas. And of course, the honor of sharing this panel with Juancho, Montse, Gerardo, and Memo, of course. It's a great opportunity for me to be here and learn about your experiences and what do you think about what has to happen with the energy sector. Let me perhaps start with a couple of elements in terms of why do I see that the present and the future is renewable. And then, of course, maybe going into the nitty-gritty of the role of the state companies and the government. But perhaps let me say that the role of energy after COVID is fundamental because it's actually what powers or what generates the source of stamina in a country is energy. Without energy, it's impossible to function at any level. So that's what we are dealing here with. Then maybe a couple of data points. First, in less than a decade, we went from tens of megawatts to thousands of megawatts. So in terms of the market itself, there's a growing tendency to incorporate much more renewable energy capacity across the board. So today, every other state in Mexico has renewable capacity, and that's the result of the collective willing of the investors and the needs of the country. Another data point is that Mexico, according to the World Economic Forum, is part of the group of countries that internationally is leading the transition. So again, that's a result of what we as Mexicans, as a country, would like to see. So, and why is that? Because today you have world record costs in terms of electricity price coming from a specific resource. So we got the record levels in power generation coming from wind, from solar, and that's that's a result that it's available for anyone to control. We have regional development. We have contributed with these results to the competitiveness of the country. And of course, in terms of the regional development, it represents not only investments, those investments translate into permanent and quality jobs that are exactly what we aspire as human beings, being productive and willing to enjoy the wellness of being relevant in a society. So today that we are discussing about the wellness and economic well-being, we should not abandon our path, rather live a just transition. And that means, of course, we really like to have a strong government that is responsible for setting up and ensuring that the rule of law is what it prevails in the economy, ensure that it's a level playing field for all market participants, and of course promote a constructive game that results in a collective well-being as it's purported by the Mexican administration. So I guess with all of these elements, there's no doubt that today and in the future, the willing of the country of Mexico is to lead this transition and perhaps lead a just transition.
Well, thank you, Leo. I would like to add something so it leads to the next question, and that is, this is obviously a very political time, and most of these decisions are probably more political definitely more political than technical. And since we, at least I feel comfortable only talking about technical issues, and I think that's what you feel comfortable with too. I would like to sort of take the discussion into what comes next, or sort of the big picture, because I think personally, the situation with renewables integration and using fuel oil and sort of going back in terms of certainty to investment and commitment, I think it's a transitory thing, and it will probably be resolved one way or the other in the next couple of I don't know, months, years, whatever. But the point is it sustainable? I mean, really, technically speaking, is it sustainable to even think about going back to coal and fuel oil, sort of walking away from a renewable integration path, not consolidating the integration of gas, cheap gas, into not only power industry, but sort of the rest of the industry as a whole, and taking energy as an input to a much more competitive economy? I think that's sort of the question that I would like all of you to try to share with us. What is your view in terms of the sustainability of these latest developments and what you see Mexico going forward with?
Well, Montserrat, let me say that perhaps there's four elements that I would consider why this is not sustainable. First is economically. If you compare the cost of generation with fuel oil, diesel, or any other hydrocarbon, it's much more expensive to generate with hydrocarbons as opposed to generate with renewables. So in terms of competitiveness, that's not sustainable. In terms of environmental impact, if you compare the emissions of coal or fuel oil or any other hydrocarbon, it's amazing the contribution of greenhouse gas emissions to the environment. So environmentally, it's not sustainable. Socially, if you actually go and see what's the demand like for a particular product, what you're observing is that all private companies, or the majority of private companies, are willing to go into green power. Today, for example, Walmart, they are part of a group called Renewable Energy 100. And that means that they have committed to generate with 100% renewable energy to power their needs. And that has to be translated into all the value chain. So today, you and I, Guillermo, Roberto, and most of the consumers would like to be consuming green generation. So socially, that's not sustainable. And finally, the bottom line is if you're on a constraint, on a budget, actually to generate, there's no way that you can actually supply the needs of a given group without going into the most competitive resource to power those needs.
Okay, well, thank you, Leo. I think I would like to hear what Juancho's point of view, and I see that Guillermo wants to chime in as well. Can we go with you, Juancho? What's your take on this? So the future of these things.
Sure. So yeah, if we look into the future, a generation system with natural gas and renewables is a great combination. Natural gas has proven to be cost-effective, abundant, and environmentally friendly. The country has invested a lot of money in building the pipelines that will increase accessibility of natural gas to the whole country. There's a few pipelines that are still under construction, but hopefully in the near future we're going to see, the northwest of the country and areas that weren't gasified before, like Baja California Sur, and more gas also into the peninsula. So as the country has more access to natural gas, not only for generation, but for households, natural gas combined with renewables create a very cost-effective, clean, yet reliable power stream for the Mexican economy. Mexico does have a challenge on what to do with fuel oil. Obviously, we all want to help the country with its needs, and energy infrastructure that would help channel the excess fuel oil to areas of the world where it can be used, like in the far Asia through the Pacific coast of Mexico, could be good ideas. We cannot, assume that, the fuel oil is going to go to waste. The country has to maximize its value for the benefit of the country and everybody. And I think, either investing more in the refining system so there is less excess, which is part of the ongoing process already, but funneling that excess to customers in the Far East could be beneficial.
Thank you. Okay, can we go first with Guillermo and then with you, Gerardo, please?
Thank you. I'm going to be brief. You touched the point of sustainability. I think that also entails certainty. What we have seen, part of this COVID crisis, it's a very important element of the volatility of the hydrocarbon sectors. No, it was amazing it was amazing seeing negative pricing, for instance, due to the lack of demand and how the markets reacted. That entails a huge volatility in this industry that provides uncertainty to keep investing in that. Also, if you are talking about fuel oil, again, just a few months ago, the IMO 2020 rule entered into force, forbidding using fuel oil for ships or require them to install scrubbers. That also changed the whole fuel oil industry in only a few months. Again, we are facing, and that's because the content was sulfur. No, again, it's the influence of the climate concerns into the energy policy that is shaping it for the better. An energy policy that doesn't take into account climate concerns is not a well-designed policy anymore. So sustainability also entails that. Certainty entails, a very well relation to the environment, because the COVID crisis is perhaps going to be managed. Perhaps a vaccine will appear sometime into the future, but the climate crisis, that's the big risk. And at least we should be humble about realizing that there are crises that are way out of control. We should not wait until we're at that point to face climate change. And again, we have the technology, we have the disruption happening, and we have to be ready to adapt to them and teach the fossil fuel industry and move into clean energy solutions.
Gerardo, you wanted to comment something?
Yeah, I would like to add something and to separate the answer in two, the short term and the long term. We are seeing that spot prices, PMLs are very low, even with a lot of fuel oil running the plants. And that's because we have a very low price of fuel oil. So the problem is that it may be sustainable in the economic way on the short term, because they are following the rules and being dispatched at $20 per megawatt hour or 25, a fuel oil plant, which is incredibly low and economically good for the PML. So we are having very low spot prices, even with fuel oil running plants. So that's a problem, because it is sustainable in the short term. It is not sustainable in the long term, because you cannot add capacity with fuel oil. You will never find finance to debt to finance a new fuel oil plant or coal plant. So it is difficult, because market rules today allows to use fuel oil because it is very cheap. Not and we cannot say anything about that. Even if we don't like it, the problem is it is very, very cheap. And
well, Gerardo, okay, well, go ahead, and then I'll just add something to that.
we are not adding environmental cost or negative externalities to that, but the dispatch doesn't count on this to fix the price. So in that sense, that's why I'm saying it is sustainable in the short term, because they are following the rules, market rules, and fixing the marginal price at very low levels. So but that's a problem.
Can I add something to that? Can you give me just a second, Leo? I think there's a lot, you've touched upon something very, very delicate and very controversial as well. I think there's a lot of talk about PMLs being very low, regardless of what's going on with fuel oil, and maybe the reason why is thermal plants with fuel oil have not been margining, have not been making the cut because they're in must-run feature, and that's why the PMLs have dropped. And that is a very, very complicated and probably it could be sort of not illegal, but barely there if there is an investigation as to how SENACE has been dispatching and going about these things. And that might be the reason why the whole acuerdos, the new acuerdos were issued in such a haste, because there's been a lot in in the last 2 or 3 months, a lot of things going on with PMLs dropping inexplicably. But what I could say without any sort of doubt is that even if Pemex gave the fuel oil away, it's not cheap. It's not cheap for the country, but it's not cheap to operate on fuel oil. So I think there's probably a lot more into that aspect, because I really don't think it's as and it's as sustainable in the short term. But Leo, you wanted to say something, and probably from you we need to move on to the polling and the questions that people are asking. Juancho, you are in lots of demand.
Yeah, just a couple of quick comments. Domestically, we have carbon tax, and we do have externalities methodology that they have to use in the power sector and across the energy sector. And internationally, of course, we are part of the Paris Agreement, which, of course, it sets up a roadmap on how to meet the commitments of the Paris Agreement. So both of those items are in effect as of now. And I guess if you actually take that into account, then most probably we wouldn't be generating with fuel oil.
Yeah, okay.
I hate to jump in here, but I think I will, because I always love these polls. And, we've posted one about investment here. So get your votes in. Let's do this really quick, and then we'll reset. I'll let Montse catch her breath. I'll let all the panelists catch their breath. Vote here, guys. We are going to be putting the results up. Here we go. So the question is, would you invest in Mexico's electric sector today? This was obviously something we were getting heavily into all throughout the course of today. We talked a lot about the model, the rules, the regulations, what's going on with some of the executive decrees and orders. What that tells us in the famous green section of the pie chart is 82%, 83% of the audience would not, is taking a position that everything we've been talking about so far would cause them not to invest in the electric sector today in Mexico. But there is still almost 20%, well, 17%, that would indeed invest. And in fact, we have folks on here who not only are investing, but working with investors and haven't invested. So, Montse, back to you. This has been a great, lively conversation. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure completely. I mean, it's the thing that I like the most. So, Juancho, you are asked, there is a question from Adam Williams. Says, we've seen many projects stalled or delayed as a result of coronavirus. Is it expected that the start of operations of the Sempra Genova terminal of refined products project in Veracruz will face some delays?
Hi, good morning, Adam. Thank you for your question. So as we have faced this coronavirus challenge, one of our priorities and values as a company is safety. We have continued to conduct our operations and construction in the particular case of Veracruz with safety in mind. That has resulted in some slowdown in the construction activities, physically distancing people and adjusting the processes so that people are safe. The facility will be ready this year. It probably would be a bit later than originally anticipated, but we're working on it, and we're very excited that we're in the final stages of constructing the facility.
Thank you. Then we have a question from John on NOM 016, which is quality of fuels. To forbid fuels with sulfur content higher than 2% in the metropolitan areas. Tula fuel oil fired production has been called Mexico Chernobyl. Can we expect things to get worse here and elsewhere with more fuel oil fired production? What stops this trend? Who wants to go with the answer? Guillermo, do you want to go into that?
Yes, of course, it can give me a chance to address one of the solutions when it comes to the climate change crisis and the contaminations from vehicle emissions. It's the disruption again, no? It is so clear to me that technology is going to be the answer to many of our problems. Now that we are seeing that the electric vehicles are moving forward with technology and cost reductions, even if we are talking about California so much, even here in California, they are moving beyond small vehicles and they are addressing trucks to be moved through electricity means. Even if we go beyond transportation, we have to pay attention to what is happening here. 27 counties here in California, they already have passed building construction codes that forbids expressly the use of natural gas for heating, and they are moving towards 100% electrification. It's the right to zero movement that is happening here, even going beyond, living besides the natural gas. So I do think that it's part of the answer. It's part of an answer to the recovery, moving to the electrification, renewable solutions in electricity generation, electromobility, bring back the auctions, clean energy auctions, and embrace that. For the next time, everyone is going to need investment. And investment is going to be really careful because there is not going to be much of it. And they're going to move to places where the framework, the environment is friendly to climate, is friendly to technology, including transportation technology. Because these problems with pollution, they are not going to go away if we keep investing and betting on fossil fuels, including natural gas.
Sort of adding on from where you left, on the NOM 016, it was a very sort of straightforward NOM, and I thought it should be sort of everyone should agree with it. I mean, who wants to continue to burn a high sulfur fuel? But it's been very controversial because Pemex has not invested in what's needed to keep their sulfur levels down, and while we're here at this crossroads where we're still thinking about burning fuel oil, I think what's most important in these things is you cannot change global trends, and you cannot change the reality of what climate change is bringing on to the world and to societies, and what will it impact how we live and how we get sort of the main comforts that we're used to. And that will have to bring about lots of technology into play, and there's no way we can continue to wipe those under the rug. And so we need to address them head on. And even if it's not today or the year after 2020, but we will have to, as a country, face the reality of climate change is there and it's not going away. Burning fossil fuels will not make it better. Poor countries are get impacted worse than others. Poor peoples are also sort of, I mean, they get the worst of all the impact. So I think all these things will get resolved sooner or later. But of course, the sooner we get to them, the best outcomes we can get. And it's not a political issue. It's a reality issue and a social issue. And so, well, there's a lot of questions. Again, there's a couple for you, Juancho. Hold on. No, his regards. Oh, okay. There's one from Rob Nicoluisky for Juancho. What is the status of the Guaymas El Oro segment of the Sonora pipeline?
Hi, Rob. Good morning. Thank you for your question. So we're working constructively with all the parties involved to accelerate the resumption of that facility. And as you can imagine, with the COVID situation, there has been a bit of a slowdown on that, but we're very confident and working with everybody involved on that.
Then there's a question from Benigno Rojas Moreno on the status of the development of shale gas in northern Mexico. I think it's a pretty straightforward answer. The government's position has been against shale oil and shale gas, and there hasn't been much more than that. And with this environment with COVID, I don't know. I mean, it only makes things worse for developing these areas, and also with what's been happening in the oil markets. So I guess if anyone wants to chip in, but I think that would be the answer. Anyone?
No, exactly. That's the answer. There's no movement.
Okay, and anyone, do you want to ask us more questions? Because I think we're kind of done. There's another technology and power, which is storage. We haven't touched on storage and how it will change the whole industry, the whole power industry, storage and hydrogen from renewable sources. And I think those two questions will not only change the sector, but change the human response to climate change. And if anyone wants to sort of elaborate on that, Guillermo? Or was it Gerardo first? You guys decide.
He was first.
Okay, I just wanted to add that those type of technologies will change, as you mentioned, the world and the way we see the industry. And I think it could be also the change, also to change the perception this administration has on intermittence. And I think they are looking at intermittence as a risk, which is true. There are operational issues coming from intermittence, but there are also technologies there in the market, not in development, but in the market, that can address that issue. And one of those is storage and other IT solutions for grid. My point is that if there's a problem, but there's a solution, and the solution is not to reject renewables. Maybe 10 years ago could be a problem, but not today. There are many countries that are leading with this intermittence very good, and I would say that we are very close to do that. And I hope in the near term we will be having SENACE doing the same.
Anyone? Moderator is not supposed to answer the questions.
Well, I guess the point here is technology is superior, so technology will prevail, and the other element is, of course, demand. Demand now is preferring much more cleaner and sustainable products, and that it's also the case for the power sector. So I guess in that sense, reality promoted by superior technology and, of course, consumer preferences.
Let me just add something. I think bilateral contracts would be the main vehicle to reach that. Private PPAs, corporate PPAs, and there are a lot of demand for those energy, and many companies willing to take long-term contracts to have that energy. And the next step should be to have but those contracts are normally for big consumers. Transaction costs are very high. The commitment for a 10-year contract is too high for a small company. So we need to find a way to democratize these kind of deals for medium and small companies. If we can have something that allows those small consumers to sign a PPA, we can maybe see that happening even without long-term auctions or other strategies. But the problem there is that they are normally creditworthiness to do that. So we need to find other mechanisms. And at the same time, the final step is to allow the interconnection. If we don't be allowed to interconnect, nothing will happen.
Yes, I mean, you're touching on something very important. Of course, there's the obstacle, or sort of the prospect of how to get the financial sector to understand these new figures in Mexico and elsewhere. But without an independent SENACE and a transparent mechanism for pricing, interconnection, and dispatch, none of those things will work properly. Because if you do not have a dispatch mechanism that is fair, a pricing mechanism that is transparent, and the interconnection obligation, and so the growth and the development of the transmission grid, nothing can happen in terms of PPAs or bilateral contracts, because it's just, what we forget is the power system is a system. It's a net, and so it's a network, and it needs to work properly in order for all these other things to happen. So without those, it'll be very difficult to
I do agree.
exploit that. And then, well, there's other questions, and one is, I'm going to read both of them, and then you guys can chip in. One is how Baja California Sur can be a pilot system to showcase how to do things differently and right. And we've been thinking about Baja California for a long time, because it's isolated, because it has had all the problems in terms of fuel oil, not interconnected to the grid, etc. So comment on that. And the other one, which is more to the environmental side of aspect of things, is what will the Mexican government say when they present the UN FCCC report that they will need to report next year? That will be a difficult report to write. And can the panel give an update on Mexico's proposed energy integration plans for the Northern Triangle countries? Anyone? Any of the three questions?
I would like to comment on, elaborate on what you said about the grid. If we are looking at a new scenario in which the grid will no longer be that open to renewable penetration, the grid is going to become more expensive. And it's a matter of cost, not the Indocisa cost. The costs are going to be there. So there is going to be a new incentive, I believe, to move into decentralization. And it is a little bit of what we touched on. There are many solutions, technological solutions, that are based on decentralized schemes. Non-wireless solutions, distributed generation, again, even if the interconnection could be harder. Mini grids, it's something that is still waiting to happen. Again, more distributed resources, self-supply and vertical integration of industrial parks with own capacity, cities and the way they procure their energy. Many decentralization schemes are still possible, even if there is this kind of hostility of the grid towards renewables. So perhaps those are solutions that are going to be worth looking into for future projects.
Anyone else want to comment? Okay.
I guess in terms of the UNFCCC framework,
Mhm.
it's very positive to see that Mexico put forward going ahead with the implementation of the carbon market, and that's a very positive signal. The administration, this administration, presented that in Madrid in the last COP. So I guess that's interesting and encouraging. Now you have to incorporate what's happening right now into the picture. But I guess the point is, of course, the bottom line prevails. No, the cost, as Guillermo was saying, it's part of what would be the most binding constraint to actually move forward. And in that sense, a superior technology, much more pollutant, would have to be set aside by better technology with less environmental footprint.
I see Jeremy is on.
All right. Look, this has been fantastic. I don't want to cut it off, but we do have one final session that starts in about 11 minutes. So I would like to start by bringing this conversation full circle with this entire virtual La Jolla conference. And let me ask a question that might be a little bit different here. We've gotten really, really deeply into what I think is an amazing set of topics on the Mexican power market and obviously gas as well. But let me ask you guys this question, each one of the panelists, and it's sort of a one-word answer, and then we'll go to the final poll. Reminder, everyone, weigh in on the polling question about this debate in Mexico over clean energy and the role of the government. So here's the question. We'll start with you, Montse, as the moderator. We began the conference talking about the impacts of COVID-19 on our lives, and we talked about habits and whether they've changed permanently or temporarily. And obviously, from that conversation and from that question derives a million consequences and scenarios. So, have our habits changed permanently or temporarily? Montse, you first.
It's a difficult one. Temporarily.
Okay. Juancho?
A lot of them temporarily, but some will be permanent.
Give us an example. Are you going to work remotely from now on? You're never going to go down?
I think, virtual conferences like this, I don't think there will be out of the question in the future. I do think that the workplace is going to become more flexible and adaptable. We have learned that we can be effective working together remotely. So creating more inclusive and adaptable working environments, work from home could work. They are cleaner solutions as well. So I think there will be some things that will stay permanent, but a lot of them will be temporary.
Thank you. Gerardo?
I think the same position. Some of them are permanent. Mobility, for example, I think we have learned a lot from this. We don't have to spend 2 hours in the car every day. So
spoken from Mexico City, that's
whenever. Yeah. Others maybe not that much. For example, we have seen that some tasks are very, very productive doing at home, which is, but others not. So it depends on the task. It depends on the business, but definitely mobility will change a lot.
Interesting.
I would say.
Interesting. Yeah. Let me jump over to Guillermo. We'll end with Leonardo. Guillermo Zuniga, permanent or temporary, or habit changes?
Yeah, it's a temporary adjustment, then a permanent adaptation, and an awareness of how important is technology and energy for keeping the way that we live and thrive as a human race. Which takes me to the final participation. We need to have this into a green recovery process.
+1 and how. Okay, Leonardo, we've already demonstrated as with our non-resident fellows just how much we already believed many years ago in the ability to work together without, I know it stinks for the non-resident fellows that they can't come live in La Jolla, but no, I'm joking, but only partially. What do you think? Temporarily, we've talked a lot about this already. I'm interested to see what you say.
No, I fully agree with all of my colleagues. I guess, in the labor market, there are some elements that would be permanently and some others temporarily. Hospitality, leisure and the like, it's different. Hotels, travel, etc., mobility, and also politics as well. In terms of elections, most probably we will see larger incorporation of technology to make sure that, the political processes continue with, with their typical timeline. So I guess in that sense, it's a mix. It's not a dichotomy between temporary or permanent, but a gray shade between temporary all the way to permanent.
Thank you. So here we are with our final poll. Thank you all so much, Montserrat, Juancho, Leonardo, Gerardo, Guillermo. All right, audience, I'm going to push the result here in just a second. Here we go. Will the Lopez Obrador administration back down in its current struggle over renewables and the role of CFE? Our famous green portion of the pie continues to dominate today. That would be no with 67.6%. 32.4 comes in of the audience saying yes. There are a third of us who are optimistic that there will be a positive resolution of the current struggle or the current debate and sort of what's unfolding. Thank you all very much. A virtual applause. Fantastic panel. We continue to stimulate amazing conversation. And I really appreciate everyone, not just in the polling, but the dynamism of the commentary and questions in the discussion and chat board have really been fantastic from my perspective. And we appreciate you all being so engaged. Thanks again to the panel. We'll see you in 5 minutes for the last session, and we'll talk on the path forward. So hopefully we'll start to talk about some of these positive things that have been highlighted by our panelists here. Thank you all again. See you in 5 minutes for our last session.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you very much, Jeremy.